In the bustling suburbs, where secrets are often whispered behind closed doors, Kayla's life took an unexpected turn when her husband, Braden, introduced her as his maid to a group of his colleagues during a casual home gathering. The confusion and humiliation in her eyes were masked by a calm exterior, but the wheels in her mind were already turning, plotting a response that would shake the very foundation of Braden's facade. What Kayla did next not only left Braden pale, but sent ripples through their social circle, revealing truths that were meant to stay hidden. Kayla had been spending the entire morning and midday in the kitchen, preparing for her husband's colleague to come over. It'd be a casual get-together, but she loved cooking for guests, so she'd set up a 3-course dinner and a homemade dessert as well. Little did she realize the thanks she'd be getting for her hard work. She was just done setting the dinner table, tending to the finer details of her setup, when Braden walked in. He kissed her on the cheek, before telling her, "It looks wonderful, love." With a smile, Kayla turned to her husband and kissed him back while she wrapped her arms around his neck. She hummed, then softly slapped his hand in retribution as he tried to steal a bite from the table behind her back. "No eating until the guests arrive, darling," she said with a laugh. As guests started to file in, Braden waited until everyone was seated before welcoming his colleagues into his home. "This evening, we are not just colleagues, but also friends. My home is your home. This wonderful meal has been prepared for you by Kayla," he said, gesturing to where Kayla was smiling fondly at her husband. "My lovely maid," Braden finished. It was all Kayla could do to school her features and not gape at her husband. It was an effort to stay calm after hearing those words come out of her husband's mouth. Kayla knew her confusion and humiliation was clear in her eyes because Braden gave her a warning glare. She cleared her throat and plastered a smile on her face. Kayla smiled again before she explained the first course to the guests, but the wheels in her mind were already turning. Instead of joining their guests by sitting down on the vacant chair she'd set out for herself next to Braden, she walked towards the door opening and made to stand vigil beside it. Kayla squared her shoulders and placed her arms behind her back, leveling her gaze to her husband. Braden and his colleagues started eating, their guests unaware of what disaster was about to go down, unaware of Kayla plotting her response. Throughout the dinner, Kayla began to embody the role of a maid with unsettling precision, serving guests with a cold professionalism that was completely unlike her usual warm nature. Every now and then, Braden would try to catch her eye, but she ignored each attempt. She called him "my lord" and "sir," and would curtsy every single time she was done addressing him. The only thing Kayla hadn't prepared for was her husband cornering her in the hallway. When Kayla walked from the dining room back to the kitchen, she dropped the facade the moment the guests couldn't see her anymore. For a moment, she closed her eyes and stood there in the silent hallway until she felt a hand grab her elbow and turn her around to face her husband. "Kayla," Braden whispered, pushing her gently against the wall. "I can explain." "No need," Kayla answered, her usual warm, melodic voice now cold and carefully devoid of emotion. She pushed away from her husband, creating space between them before demonstratively straightening her clothes. "I completely understand, Braden. No need to explain a thing," she continued with a practiced smile. What she saw in her husband's eyes in that moment simply hardened Kayla's resolve. She had to make sure to keep up her charade, so when she got back to the kitchen, Kayla started plating the desserts. She only gave herself a small moment of steadying her fraying nerves before taking the first 2 plates out to the dining room. When Kayla got done serving everyone, she excused herself and stepped out. Then she went to set up the first part of her revenge. When the guests had cleared out, praising Braden on his maid's wonderful cooking, Kayla hardly waited until the last one had left before turning around and stomping up the stairs. Her husband followed closely behind. She maintained her distance, waited in the doorway of the bedroom until he reached her. Then she declared she'd spend the night in the guest room because, after all, maids don't stay the night. Kayla woke up to the sound of silence. It was a clear sign Braden had left for work, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the aftermath of last night. She forced herself out of bed and made her way downstairs. The house was spotless. Braden had cleaned everything, erasing any sign of the dinner. Kayla felt a sting of emptiness, but shrugged it off. She made breakfast, then sat down with a pen and paper to plan her next steps. After breakfast, Kayla dialed Marlene, her best friend, her fingers trembling slightly. As soon as Marlene picked up, Kayla spilled everything about the previous evening's events. She tried to keep her voice steady, focusing on the facts, avoiding the whirlpool of emotions threatening to suck her in. Marlene's shock was palpable, even through the phone, reacting with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I can't believe he did that!" Marlene gasped, ready to jump into action. Marlene's anger on Kayla's behalf was a fierce storm, yet she was quick to switch gears, her mind racing with ideas on how to help Kayla. "Okay, we need a plan," she declared, her tone turning conspiratorial. They brainstormed, weaving a strategy that would not only reveal Braden's true colors, but also protect Kayla. They ended the call with a list of tasks and a promise to meet soon. Kayla felt a flicker of hope, bolstered by Marlene's support. Feeling a bit more grounded after the call, Kayla climbed the stairs to her and Braden's bedroom. She pulled out a suitcase and began to pack her essentials: clothes, personal documents, a few cherished photos. Each item was chosen with care, a silent testament to the seriousness of her situation. Kayla's movements were methodical, her resolve firm. She knew this was just the beginning, but she was ready to face whatever came next. With the suitcase packed, Kayla dragged it back to the guest bedroom. She glanced around, realizing this room would be her sanctuary for the foreseeable future. It was a strange thought, being a guest in her own home, yet she couldn't let herself dwell on it. She had a plan to put into action, one that required patience and precision. Kayla set the suitcase down, her mind already racing ahead to the next steps of her scheme. Kayla heaved her suitcase into the guest bedroom, the weight of her situation pressing down on her. This room, once just a spare, now held her entire world. She unpacked her things slowly, arranging her personal items around the room. It was a small act of taking control, of making this space hers for however long she needed to stay. She was preparing for the long haul, ready to watch her plan unfold from this new vantage point. The town they lived in was known for its quiet streets and reserved neighbors. Kayla had always played the part of the polite and accommodating wife, especially in public. But after Braden's humiliating introduction, something within her snapped. She was done being the quiet, reserved Kayla. It was time for her voice to be heard, for her story to be told. She knew the risks, but silence was no longer an option. It was time for action. After moving her essentials, Kayla found herself sitting at Braden's desk, facing their wedding photo hanging on the wall. She stared at their smiling faces, a stark contrast to the turmoil she felt inside. This desk, where they'd planned their future together, now served as her command center against him. The irony wasn't lost on her. With a heavy heart, she turned away from the photo, ready to face the reality of their broken vows. Alone with her thoughts, Kayla allowed herself to finally feel the weight of the previous day's events. The frustration and sadness she'd bottled up came flooding out. she sat, letting the emotions wash over her, acknowledging the hurt and betrayal. But Kayla knew she couldn't drown in her feelings. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she wiped her eyes and opened Braden's laptop. It was time to shift from feeling to action. With Braden's password entered, Kayla began her search through his laptop. She combed through files and folders, looking for anything that might hint at his plans or reveal his secrets. Financial statements, contracts, email exchanges, she gathered them all. Every document she found, she printed or saved onto a USB drive. Kayla worked with a single-minded focus, determined to arm herself with as much information as possible. It was a race against time and deception. Kayla carefully slid the stack of printed documents behind the guest bedroom's headboard. She made sure they were completely out of sight, a hidden cache of evidence against Braden. This makeshift hiding spot would have to do for now. As she stepped back, checking her work, she couldn't help but feel a mix of dread and determination. These papers held the key to her next steps, but also to a confrontation she wasn't quite ready for. The doorbell rang, and Kayla rushed to answer it, finding Marlene on the other side. The tight hug they shared spoke volumes, more than words ever could. They settled into the living room, wine poured and ice cream scooped, a temporary balm to the turmoil of Kayla's life. Marlene's presence was a reminder of the support system Kayla had, a lifeline in the midst of her stormy relationship with Braden. Over their comforting treats, Kayla's emotions bubbled to the surface. "This is the last time, Mar," she said, tears glinting in her determined eyes. "He's humiliated me once too many times. This has gone too far." Marlene's grip on Kayla's hand tightened, a silent vow of solidarity. "It'll be okay," Marlene assured her. "Braden will get what he deserves." Their conversation was more than just words. It was a pact for justice. With renewed resolve, Kayla and Marlene revisited their carefully laid plans. Kayla retrieved the documents from their hiding place, handing them to Marlene for safekeeping. They went over every detail, ensuring no stone was left unturned. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about setting things right, about reclaiming Kayla's life from the shadows of deceit and manipulation. The documents were the first step in a much larger journey towards freedom. "Mar, these are safer with you," Kayla insisted as she handed over the documents. She knew that keeping them in the house was a risk too big to take. If Braden found them, it would all be over. Marlene nodded, understanding the gravity of what she was being entrusted with. "Don't worry, Kay," she reassured her friend. "I'll keep them safe." It was a moment of trust, but also a reminder of the cautious dance they were engaged in. As the time for Braden's return neared, Marlene got ready to leave. They shared a long, tight hug, a silent exchange of strength and hope. "Stay strong, just a little longer," Marlene whispered, infusing Kayla with determination. Kayla nodded, a mix of fear and resolve in her heart. Watching Marlene walk away, she felt alone yet empowered, ready for whatever Braden's return might bring. Shortly after Marlene's car disappeared from view, Braden's vehicle made its way into the driveway. Kayla, donning her metaphorical maid's uniform, prepared for an evening of pretense. She listened as the door opened, stepping into her role with a heavy heart yet firm resolve. This facade, she reminded herself, was crucial to her plans. With each step he took inside, she braced herself, a silent warrior in her domestic battlefield. Kayla greeted Braden with a deeper curtsy, keeping her eyes deliberately averted. "Welcome home, sir," she said, injecting a measured dose of respect into her voice. She extended her hand to take his coat, an offer he blatantly ignored, choosing instead to walk past her. Despite the cold exchange, Kayla found a strange sense of satisfaction in maintaining her role. a testament to her unwavering resolve amidst the storm. Braden's voice cut through the silence. "Kayla, this has gone on for long enough. You have made your point." His annoyance unmistakable. The shift in his demeanor was palpable. Where once there was desperation, now stood agitation. Kayla, recognizing the change, fortified her resolve. This battle of wills had escalated, but she was not ready to surrender. She stood firm, a beacon of calm in the face of Braden's growing storm. Kayla maintained her composure, responding with practiced ignorance. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir, but dinner will be served shortly," she stated, her voice a calm contrast to his frustration. Turning her back, she ignored his continued attempts to engage, her steps toward the kitchen steady and determined. In this intricate dance of wills, Kayla was intent on leading, her actions speaking volumes of her determination to see her plan through. Throughout the evening, Kayla maintained her role as Braden's maid, a silent protest to his earlier humiliation. Yet, when dinner was served, she took her place at the table. Sitting opposite Braden, she ate quietly, her actions measured and deliberate. This small act of joining him at the table was a bold statement in itself, challenging the norms they'd fallen into over the last tense hours. After the last bite was taken, Braden broke the silence. "So, can we talk about this now?" he asked, his tone softening slightly. Kayla paused, setting down her cloth, her lips pressing together as she considered his request. It was the opening she had been waiting for, a chance to address the elephant in the room. Yet, the apprehension of what was to come hung heavily in the air between them. "Talk about what, exactly?" Kayla asked, her voice steady, her gaze meeting his across the table. For a moment, she dropped the maid facade, embracing the vulnerability and strength of her true self. The physical space of the table provided a buffer, giving her a sense of safety to finally confront the issues that had been simmering beneath the surface of their marriage. "Your ridiculous behavior, maybe?" Braden retorted, his patience fraying. The mask of the affable husband slipped, revealing a glimpse of his frustration. This shift marked a turning point in their conversation, the pretenses falling away as they prepared to delve into the heart of their conflict. The air was charged with tension, a prelude to the storm that was about to break. An argument erupted, with Kayla accusing Braden of years of humiliation. "For 5 years, you've made me feel small," she declared, her voice rising with each word. The grievances of their marriage spilled out, a torrent of pent-up frustration and hurt. This was not just about a single evening, but the culmination of years of neglect and disrespect. Kayla stood her ground, determined to make her voice heard. As the argument escalated, Braden initially denied Kayla's accusations, clinging to his version of events. But in his fervor to defend himself, he slipped, revealing a deeper truth. "I couldn't have told my colleagues that you were my wife," he admitted, his words betraying him. This slip opened a new chapter in their confrontation, hinting at motivations and secrets Kayla had only begun to unravel. Braden initially denied everything Kayla accused him of, his words a tangled web of deflection. But then he slipped, admitting he couldn't have introduced her as his wife to his colleagues. This confession cracked the facade he'd maintained, revealing the strain and hidden motives in their marriage. Kayla, seizing on this slip, pressed him further, demanding the truth behind his actions and the real reasons for his deception. "Why?" Kayla asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Braden's response was a torrent of accusations. He blamed her for not fulfilling her role as a wife, for not bearing him a child, for losing her beauty. Words designed to wound deeply. Kayla listened in disbelief as Braden continued his cruel rant, his words painting a picture of his resentment and dissatisfaction that had evidently been brewing for years. Kayla was rendered speechless by Braden's harsh critique of their marriage. Tears streamed down her face, a silent testimony to the pain his words inflicted. With a heavy heart, she stood up, towering over Braden with dignity. "I understand," she said, her voice barely a whisper but laden with resolve. Turning away, she left the dining room, leaving Braden to contemplate the impact of his brutal honesty. Kayla hurried to the guest bedroom, her sanctuary from the storm. Locking the door behind her, she slid to the floor, her body racked with sobs. The guest room, once a place of refuge, now echoed with the pain of Braden's words and the shattered illusions of their marriage. Here, in the solitude of her grief, Kayla allowed herself to mourn the love she once believed they shared. The tears, a cleansing torrent. After some time, Kayla's tears began to subside, replaced by a steely determination. Frantically wiping her face, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the pause button on the recording app. The entire conversation, Braden's confession and cruelty, had been captured. This recording, this undeniable proof of his true feelings, was her ace in the hole, a pivotal piece in the unfolding drama of their disintegrating marriage. The sun rose on a new day, and with it, Kayla's resolve hardened. She didn't need to dissect Braden's reasons anymore. His actions had spoken louder than any words could. Picking up her phone, she called Marlene. "We're moving ahead with the plan," she declared. It was a moment of clarity and determination. Kayla knew that looking back was no longer an option. The path forward was clear, and she was ready to walk it. As soon as Braden left for work, Kayla wasted no time. She dialed her lawyer, her voice steady as she explained the situation. The call was a mix of legal jargon and personal revelations, a necessary step towards her liberation. Kayla outlined everything, from the emotional turmoil to the concrete evidence she had gathered. It was a call that set the wheels of justice in motion, a beacon of hope in the midst of her stormy marriage. Next, Kayla texted Marlene, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Can you bring the documents to the lawyer?" she typed. It was a tactical move, designed to keep her actions under the radar. Marlene's involvement was crucial. She was Kayla's lifeline, a trusted ally in the battle that lay ahead. This text set the stage for the next phase of their plan, a silent yet powerful act of defiance against Braden. Kayla knew that her safety and sanity depended on playing the long game with Braden. As she waited for his return, she steeled herself for the role she had to resume. This wasn't about giving in. It was about strategy, about biding her time until she could make her move. Kayla was no longer the woman Braden thought he could control. She was a player in her own right, ready to turn the tables on him. When Braden walked through the door that evening, Kayla greeted him without the MAID Act, a return to normalcy that was anything but normal. Braden's skeptical frown was met with Kayla's calm facade. They were both actors in a play of pretense, each aware of the undercurrents but choosing to skate on the surface. It was a delicate dance of appearances, a facade that Kayla was determined to maintain for just a little while longer. The dinner table between Kayla and Braden was a battlefield marked not by words, but by the silence and the unspoken. Kayla navigated through it with a calm exterior, nodding and making the right noises as Braden spoke about his day. The tension was a tangible presence, yet she managed to keep the peace, a testament to her strength and determination to see through the facade of normalcy they both upheld. As they prepared for bed, Kayla found herself studying Braden, a sense of alienation washing over her. The man beside her, once her entire world, now felt like a stranger. Their routines, once shared with love and laughter, now seemed like empty rituals performed out of habit. It struck her deeply how much they had drifted apart, how the gap between them had widened into a chasm filled with lost love and missed connections. Following Braden into their shared bedroom, Kayla was enveloped by a wave of melancholy. There was no anger, no confrontation, just a silent acknowledgement of the distance between them. She yearned for the days when they were young and in love, when their future seemed bright and promising. Those memories now seemed like echoes from another life, a stark contrast to the cold reality of their present. Lying beside Braden, Kayla stared at the ceiling, tears pooling in her eyes as his snoring filled the room. It was a sound that once brought her comfort, a sign of his presence. Now, it was just another reminder of the gulf between them. The tears were for what was lost, for the love that had turned into resentment. She lay there, a silent sentinel of their failing marriage, waiting for sleep that refused to come. Despite the sleepless night, a sense of hope flickered within Kayla. As she lay awake, she realized that tomorrow held the promise of change. She had made her decision, chosen her path forward. The night's darkness would give way to the light of a new day, a symbol of the new beginnings that awaited her. It was a long night, but Kayla held on to the belief that better times were on the horizon, and with that, she found the strength to face what was to come. Morning light crept in, finding Kayla exhausted but nestled in Braden's arms. Despite the chasm of their waking hours, the night had brought them together in an unconscious search for comfort. It was a bittersweet reminder of their deep, yet troubled connection. Kayla lay there for a moment, contemplating the complexity of their relationship, bound by history and emotion, even as they stood on the brink of change. With a sense of urgency, Kayla untangled herself from Braden, her movements swift and determined. The sudden shift woke him, and his voice, tinged with confusion, called out to her. She didn't stop, didn't look back, her heart racing as she closed the bathroom door behind her. The sound of the shower drowned out the world, a temporary shield from the reality waiting outside, as she prepared herself for the day ahead. Kayla remained in the sanctuary of the bedroom until the sound of the front door signaled Braden's departure. She exhaled, a mixture of relief and resolve washing over her. The events of the night lingered like shadows, but Kayla's path was clear. She couldn't face him. Not now. Not when every step she took was a step away from the life they had built together, towards a future she had to believe was hers to claim. Dressed and ready, Kayla checked her phone, the screen lit with notifications from Marlene. Texts and missed calls piled up, each one a silent scream for her attention. Marlene's urgency transmitted through the digital messages, a palpable concern that pierced Kayla's resolve. She knew that whatever lay behind those messages was another step in the unraveling of her current world, a step towards the truth she was seeking. Returning Marlene's calls, Kayla's voice was steady, reassuring her friend that she was all right. Marlene wasted no time, diving into the details of her visit to the lawyer with the important documents in hand. The weight of Marlene's words was heavy, each one carrying the gravity of their situation. Kayla listened intently, her mind racing with possibilities, each revelation from Marlene a piece of the puzzle they were painstakingly putting together. Marlene, with urgency in her voice, recounted her visit to Kayla's lawyer. She had delivered the crucial documents, and the next morning, the lawyer had found something significant. His prompt call to Marlene wasn't just routine, It was a clarion call for Kayla to make an immediate visit to his office. The weight of his discovery hung in the air, a pivotal moment that promised to shift the direction of Kayla's turbulent journey. The lawyer's insistence on a swift meeting was a beacon of urgency that Kayla couldn't ignore. Marlena relayed his message with a seriousness that pierced the morning's usual tranquility. There was no time for the day's ordinary routines. This was a moment that demanded immediate action. Kayla's response was as swift as it was decisive, propelled by the need to confront whatever revelation awaited her at the lawyer's office. Without sparing a moment for breakfast, Kayla dressed quickly, her movements fueled by a mix of apprehension and determination. Braden had taken the car, leaving her with her bike as the only means to reach her destination. The ride to the lawyer's office was a physical manifestation of her racing thoughts, each pedal stroke bringing her closer to the answers that lay in wait, answers that could redefine her path forward. Arriving at the lawyer's office, Kayla was met by Marlene, whose presence offered a momentary respite in the form of a reassuring hug. Together, they entered, a united front against the uncertainty that awaited them. The lawyer's office, usually a place of order and logic, now felt like the setting for a significant turning point in Kayla's life. Their greeting to the lawyer was tinged with anticipation, ready to face whatever truths his findings would reveal. Seated across from the lawyer, Kayla braced herself for what was to come. The documents she had provided held a surprise, one that even the lawyer hadn't anticipated. His explanation began, each word carefully chosen, unraveling the unexpected truth hidden within the pages Kayla had entrusted to him. This revelation promised to cast a new light on her situation, offering clarity amidst the turmoil that had become her constant companion. The lawyer laid out the truth. Braden was on the brink of losing his job and had been pretending to be wealthier and more influential than he was, all to avoid dismissal. In their small town, where everyone knew each other's business, appearances mattered. Braden's act was a desperate bid to maintain his status and prevent gossip, a facade that was crumbling under the weight of his reality. Kayla listened intently as the lawyer revealed Braden's intentions. He had aimed to use their marriage to access the inheritance she received from her great aunt. The revelation sent a chill down her spine. Her marriage, it seemed, was entangled in a web of deceit from the start. Braden's designs on her inheritance painted a picture of manipulation she had never suspected, changing her perception of their union entirely. The conditions of Kayla's inheritance were news to her. The money was accessible only if she remained unmarried or had a child. Braden's insistence on starting a family suddenly took on a sinister hue. It was not driven by a desire for parenthood, but by greed. For 5 years, he had waited, hoping to unlock the wealth Kayla hadn't even known was conditional. The lawyer's revelations pieced together the puzzle of Braden's behavior over the years. Armed with the knowledge and evidence of Braden's deceit, Kayla took a decisive step towards freedom. She signed the divorce papers, a symbolic act of reclaiming her life and severing ties with a man who saw her as a means to an end. The lawyer provided her with incontrovertible proof of Braden's schemes, documents that would support her case and protect her future. It was a moment of empowerment, the beginning of a new chapter. With the divorce finalized, Kayla found herself in possession of the large sum from her inheritance, a fortune she had been unaware of. Freed from the shackles of her marriage, she decided to celebrate her newfound independence. She and Marlene planned a wonderful holiday, a journey that symbolized her liberation and the start of a brighter, more authentic life. It was a celebration of freedom, friendship, and the promise of new beginnings.